There's so many misconceptions about the human papillomavirus that people don't realize. It is extremely important for women, but we don't understand how important it is for men too. So human papillomavirus, or HPV, is the only virus that can cause a cancer, right? So what we don't realize is that there are over 200 strains of HPV, or human papillomavirus. Most of those strains do nothing. They can cause warts on your fingers or warts on your skin. Those are the cutaneous versions, but the mucosal versions are the ones that get into the mucosal surfaces, which are like your mouth, your genitals. There's so many misconceptions about the human papillomavirus that people don't realize. It is extremely important for women, but we don't understand how important it is for men too. So human papillomavirus, or HPV, is the only virus that can cause a cancer, right? So what we don't realize is that there are over 200 strains of HPV, or human papillomavirus. Most of those strains do nothing. They can cause warts on your fingers or warts on your skin. Those are the cutaneous versions, but the mucosal versions are the ones that get into the mucosal surfaces, which are like your mouth, your genitals, the actual mucosal surface, the vagina, the lining of the urethra. Those are areas that are very, very difficult and can manifest themselves into a cancer. So the entire reason why we do pap smears is because we are trying to detect the strains of the human papillomavirus that can cause a cancer. All right, what does that mean? So for women, there are 15 different strains. Actually, for men and women, out of those 200 strains that I'm talking about, there are 15 strains that can cause a problem. Most notably, 16 and 18, HPV 16 and 18 are the two most prevalent that can cause a cancer. 16 being 50% of all cancers from HPV. For women, what's important is pap smears. Pap smears that detect high-risk strands of HPV, and early detection is how you treat it and how you prevent cervical cancers. Now, for men, where the problem is that like, well, why, HPV, men don't get penile cancer or whatever. Very rarely they do, but that's not the biggest thing. There are a couple things that people don't realize when you talk about men. Number one is that you have mucosal surfaces in your throat as well as in your tongue and your mouth. So HPV can cause oral cancers. How does that happen? Well, if you're talking about sex, oral sex, right? So there are men that are developing oral cancers from oral sex. So when you talk about the Gardasil vaccination is the vaccine that is vaccinating you from the highest or the most oncogenic strains of the HPV virus. It's 9 of them, 6, 11, 16, 18, 31, 33, 45, 52, 58. So those 9, those account for, 7 of them account for approximately 90% of cancers. 6 and 11 are risk for skin issues, or the cutaneous versions, which also are in the anal region, that cause a problem. But nonetheless, we're not going to talk about that. But I say this to say that, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but pap smears for women will prevent cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is one of the slowest growing cancers there is. It takes 8 to 10 years to manifest itself. And so why pap smears are so important is because you are detecting those high-risk strands of HPV. And if you have a high-risk strand of HPV and your body is not clearing it, which 90% of the time the body will clear it, but if it's not and it lies dormant and it stays in your cervix, it's going to to slowly progress and become more and more abnormal until it develops into a cancer. So pap smear, so for women ages 21 to 30, every 3 years, if they're negative, they're positive, it changes the algorithm. For women 30 to 65, it's every 5 years. So you get a pap smear with HPV co-testing. If those are positive, I mean, if those are negative, then it's every 5 years. But if they're positive, that will dictate what the treatment options are, so that cervical cancer is not progressed into. As far as for men, there is no real check, and that's the problem, right? So that's why the Gardasil vaccination is so very important. As a father with twins, a male and a female, you know, I have this vaccine. I got my son and my daughter vaccinated. One, obviously, because of, you know, the things that can happen to my daughter, but for my son, not only is he at risk for a penile cancer or for a throat cancer in the future from infection from HPV, but he's also a vector, meaning that, you know, if he has sex in the future, he can carry the HPV, which can also, and I'm not putting my son or my daughter, I'm just saying, I'm just using these as examples, but men and women, let's not use my kids because I hate that, but for men and women, you know, men are the carriers of this this HPV virus, which can then, you know, cause a problem in women. So it's called herd vaccination, meaning that if you vaccinate everybody, men and women, then, and it's a sexually transmitted thing, then you're helping everybody. So I strongly recommend HPV vaccinations. Please don't believe everything you hear about vaccinations. Like, I won't go into all these arguments about people that get vaccinations and what you think about autism and all that stuff. Just understand that vaccines were invented to help us. It's not the government trying to control us. It's not people trying to make money, but as a healthcare professional that knows and reads, and also a very conscious black man, I understand that it is important. It's not somebody trying to run my life or my kid's life. It's trying to prevent major illnesses. Because if you look at it, look at measles. You had a measles outbreak, for goodness sake. Like, people were dying from measles, you know, years ago, but now it's coming back because people are not getting vaccinated. Look at chickenpox, right? So when we were kids, you know, everybody had chickenpox. It was a rite of passage. Where now my kids will never get chickenpox. Never had it. You know, I was in 6th grade, you know, at home, sick as a dog with these pop marks all over the place. My kids will never experience that. It's because of vaccinations. So vaccinations do much, much, much more good than any harm. You know, it's just basically arming your body and preparing it for a bad thing that's happening. So strongly recommend vaccination, strongly recommend Gardasil. And as far as HPV is concerned, understand that, you know, talking bad about folks that got this and got that or whatever, but realize that with HPV, 90 to 95% of all sexually transmitted, 90 to 95% of all people that have sex are going to acquire HPV at some point in their life. Remember, it's over 200 strains. The problem is that are you going to get the strain that can lead to a cancer? You don't know the answer to that. So protect yourself, arm yourself. Vaccinations are key. Always see your doctor and test if something is going wrong. For men, if you feel something in your throat, you feel something going on in any region, talk to a doctor. And women, stay up to date with your pap smears. Also realize that smoking is the biggest thing that will hurt you when it comes down to getting rid of HPV and progressing into cervical cancer. The carcinogens and smoke and nicotine populate into the cervix, and it makes it hard for the body to get rid of the HPV virus. So realize that smokers are going to have a higher risk for higher risk for cervical cancer rather. So understand your body, understand what HPV is, understand it's highly prevalent, and understand that you need to be checked and stay on top of your health so that you know, something that can turn into a cancer never manifests itself. It's Doc P. You know, hope this is helpful. You know, hope this. So we've completely known.